Now, more stories, insights, and analysis of Illinois policy and politics. This is Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Policy Institute. Once again, your host, AM 560's Dan Proft.
Welcome back to Illinois Rising. I'm Pat Hughes of the Illinois Opportunity Project, joined by Kathleen Murphy, who's the Director of Communications at the Illinois Opportunity Project. And Kathleen, what a weekend this was. We inaugurated Donald Trump as the 45th President of the United States. I was very slow to Trump, but ultimately was supportive of him when he was the nominee. And we'll get to him in a second. But for now, I want to talk about our 44th President, Barack Obama. And of course, as everyone knows, his political life started here in Illinois as a legislator and then as a United States Senator and of course, President. And I'm just wondering what you think about his legacy, not nationally, but sort of what's his legacy as it relates to Illinois and, of course, all the sort of things that have gone on in the last 8 years. You know, he's connected to all these folks in Springfield. And give me some thoughts on viewing his presidency as it relates to Illinois.
Sure. Well, a lot of times we say the Obama administration exported the Chicago way to Washington, but in return, he has also really helped preserve the Chicago way in Illinois, in that Illinois has scored a lot of big projects, hundreds of millions of dollars in federal grants during his term that's allowed this insane spending and this political culture to go unreformed. And that has protected the leadership in this state. Just recently, just to go through some of the funding, a $1.1 billion federal grant for the CTA, the Pullman National Monument, came to Illinois. In 2012, the Obama White House and Governor Quinn made a deal to sell the Thompson Center to the federal government. Part of the 2009 stimulus was $1 billion for high-speed rail from Chicago to St. Louis because, Illinois Democrats can't get people out of here fast enough. And then, $1 billion set aside for clean coal energy. All these projects and grants allowed Quinn, Madigan, Rahm Emanuel to just keep the gears greased and perpetuate the culture, in my view, and that has really been the Obama connection.
Yeah, no, those are all great points. I mean, you just mentioned Emanuel. He's his chief of staff, and now he's mayor of Chicago. Right. And the Obama era ushered in sort of, all hope and change and this idea that everything was going to be better. And at least as it relates to Chicago, and at least as it relates to Illinois, everything, well, at least until recently with Rauner and some of these legislative victories and some of the policies that can have been defeated and can get passed, like progressive taxes and SB 1229 and some of those things, everything is worse. Yeah. The violence in the city of Chicago is national news all the time because it's as bad as it can possibly be. The schools, particularly in the city of Chicago, are worse than they've ever been. And the beat goes on. And Obama was supposed to be sort of this post-partisan savior on the left who was going to institute policies that were going to help and improve people's lives. And instead, at least as it relates to Chicago, at least as it relates to Illinois, that hasn't been the case. And when you take that with all the things we've just discussed and add that with the problems of Obamacare, where you could keep your doctor and you can't, where your premiums have skyrocketed, and that being his sort of major domestic policy, you've got, a bad domestic policy that's leading to high cost and low access, and you've got uneducated kids who become adults killing each other in the streets of Chicago. That, to me, is the Chicago legacy of Chicago's Barack Obama.
Yes, I agree. I mean, it's gone completely downhill underneath during his presidency and under Rahm Emanuel in particular. And he's allowed them to continue this system. Because the big thing about Rahm Emanuel electing him, and even Republicans would say this, well, you want him because he's got the connections. He knows everybody and he can bring more into Chicago. Well, it didn't force the reforms that were really needed in the city of Chicago and in the state.
Yeah, and what I read leading up to Trump's inauguration on Friday, what I read whole week in every paper, local paper, every day, and every columnist, I've never seen it before like this. And I guess, he is from Chicago, so I get that. Yeah. But what I'm reading is sort of this, I use the word, I hope it's the correct word, hagiography, where he's like, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, where he's like, they look at him like some sort of deity. Look what he did, and he had no scandals, and he got a beautiful family and all this. So
of scandals,
what? It's right, but it's like, so what? This is so all the press I see covering him in Chicago and nationally last week was just how wonderful this person is, because the press is liberal, and they're ignoring, this is what's incredible to me about the left. They are ignoring the day-to-day suffering of real people who they, by the way, would never deign to spend any time with or interact with, of real people who are suffering every day in failing schools, on violent streets, in homes that are underwater, paying property taxes they can't afford. And we're saying all these wonderful things about Obama, and he hasn't improved anybody's life.
Well, and meanwhile, he has Black Lives Matter to the White House to give an award to them, to recognize them. And when a 9-year-old boy is shot in an alley in Chicago, he's silent on it. Yeah, that was atrocious.
Yeah, this is the kind of thing that where it's all packaged presentation, right? It's all the sort of Kennedy mystique and the Obama mystique. And when you pull away the layers of the onion and you look at the policies and you look at the impact that those policies have had, particularly in Democratic strongholds like Chicago, like Los Angeles, like Baltimore, like Detroit, like New York City, where people's lives are under constant pressure and in many cases torment, you see a president of the United States who was above the things that he claimed to be. He claimed to be the community organizer. He claimed to be someone who was going to help people of different, races and creeds and gender orientations. And what he did instead was foment disagreement amongst people and lead, particularly in the cities, particularly among the people who are most vulnerable, lead to a presidency in a country, and in our case, a city and a state that has suffered under his leadership. And I, for one, although I was slow to come to him, am looking forward to what the Trump administration is going to do to change that.